Welcome back everybody to another video. In this video I'm going to talk about native resolution and 1080p or 1440p upscale to the nearest 4K. Now we all know that anything native is better than upscaling, but the real question is that sometimes you have a game that is in 1080p or 1440p and your console will upconvert it to 4K. And the topic here is that upscale to 4K actually better than have it turned down to its native format, which is 1080p or 1440p, even though your console will upconvert it to 4K to the nearest highest resolution? Well, I'm gonna tell you this right now from my experience, and I'm gonna bring up the Xbox One S, even though in this video we are talking about the Xbox Series S. From my experience, and it's all your preference, but from my experience, that if your game or console is not native 4K gaming, and it's like, say for instance, if your game is a 1080p game natively, it's better to leave it at 1080p natively instead of for it to be at 1080p upscale to 4K. So I'm gonna give you guys my experience with the Xbox One S. I've known this for a very long time, but let me tell you why I came to this conclusion. So back in the days when the Xbox One S came out, I got it on day one, and on day one, Xbox One S came with 2 terabyte internally for $400, I believe. So I bought that on day one. And I was, and at that time I also owned the OG Xbox One. And when I was playing, at the time it was Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And I was noticing that when I was playing the Xbox One S, having a resolution on 4K on the Xbox One S, when I was playing the game, I noticed that the graphics was a little bit different from the OG Xbox One. So I actually made a video back then stating that the Xbox One OG is still better than the Xbox One S. So I couldn't figure out for a while why that is. So particularly on the Xbox One S, it was upscaling to 4K for the Infinite Warfare. So the graphics was a little soft and it wasn't as sharp, and it looks actually kind of dull. Even the color, when I was playing it on the same TV that I've always been playing on, it's like if you were to use a VGA cable versus a HDMI cable. So I don't know if you know how a resolution work, how it looks on a VGA cable, but that's what it was like. It was like playing with the HDMI cable resolution and then swapping it out for a VGA cable. That's what it felt like when I was running on the Xbox One S on Call of Duty. And then later on, I realized that if I were to, when I changed the resolution from the Xbox One S 4K and then I turn it down to 1080p, I got that effect resolution that I am used to. Now, granted, that 1080p is a lot lower resolution than upscaling 4K, but your picture is a lot crisp, a lot sharper. And another way for me to explain what it looked like when you play on the Xbox One S on a 2K game and it upscaled to 4K, it's like for your sharp settings, it's like instead of like having your sharp like above 50, it's like turning your sharp all the way down to 0 and negative. And I didn't like that. So, but when I discovered that if you turn your resolution down on the Xbox One S to 1080p, it looked a lot better and more crisp. And obviously, it's only 2K resolution. Now, fast forward to the Xbox Series S. The Xbox Series S is obviously a 10 times better console than the Xbox One S. and I love it. But when I play, so when I play on my 4K LG display with the Xbox Series S, and I put it on 4K, obviously the games that is not native 4K will upscale to 4K. Even the games that are native 4K, obviously on the Series S, when you have a game that's for native 4K, but your Series S, when you're running at 120 hertz. So, for instance, Gears of War, let's say Gears 5, I run at 120 hertz on my 4K OLED, and it's gonna run native 1440p upscaled to 4K. And when you look at the resolution, especially on my 65-inch OLED, obviously, if you compare that resolution on a 1440p upscaled to 4K on the Xbox One S versus my Xbox Series X native 4K at 120 hertz, you can tell day and night that the resolution of the Xbox Series S 1440p upscaled to 4K is really weak. Now that is all fine and dandy because Xbox Series X is a totally different beast. But for the Xbox Series S, when you have it at 1440p upscale to 4K, it's actually better if you were to turn down your Xbox Series S, turn it all the way down to like 1440p or 1080p natively. Now you might lose some HDR when you do that, but I found that it looked a lot crisp and better than having it at 1440p upscale to 4K. So reiterate here, when you have a game that is native 1080p or 1440p natively, I found that it's best for you to leave it at that resolution instead of having it upscale to the nearest 4K, because from my experience, having it at that native resolution, what the game is intended for, looks a lot better than having it upscale to that 4K, which will make it a lot more soft. But like I said, it's all with your preference. But for me, I prefer to play it on that native resolution, especially on the Xbox Series S. So that is my insight on upscaling resolution versus native resolution. And thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Hooded Dragons out.